honored today to introduce the Reverend Patricia Ray, who has been a UU for 28 years and a member of our Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church for 18. She's a registered healer with the International Healers Association. She's a Reiki master, and she's a member of the Association of Professional Chaplains. She's a registered nurse, and her master's degree is in public administration. She served in all the roles on the UU Buckman Bridge board. An interfaith minister, she obtained her graduate degree from Hartford Seminary and her CPE, which we'll learn more about, at Baptist South. Living her own faith path as a Unitarian Christian, she currently facilitates the Christian Fellowship and serves as a chaplain and facilitator of the pastoral care team for Buckman Bridge. I'm also proud to say that she was instrumental in helping to offer wedding services for gay couples at the Buckman Bridge after our city closed the doors. This is a woman who is providing pastoral care not only for her church community, but for the wider community at large. And she's here today to share that message with all of us. Thank you, Rev Ray.
Thank you. Can't come without water. So I've been Googled. Because I was like, that wasn't all in what I sent over here. It's been 2 hours since the code, and we're still waiting on the family's arrival. It's interesting sitting here at 5 a.m. The lights are lowered, but they're not off. The monitors are beeping. The call bells are ringing. The vacuum sister slams the containers into the delivery slot. A nurse says it shocks the patients because it's so loud. Most of the rooms have the television on. The sitter down the hall is talking loudly to her charge. And even though she's 4 rooms away, I can hear her. At 5:30, the lights come on. When do people sleep here? How do their bodies refresh to recover? Or is the noise here to drive away the fears and ensure we'll make it through the night? Another night, I'm called for the patient. She asks me if I provide for all faiths. I tell her I do, and I ask hers. She tells me she's Catholic. Obviously, I'm not a priest. And I offer to call one for her. She looks me over and tells me that I'll do just fine. And we watch the Olympics together for a while, and she goes to sleep. This is the work of Clinical Pastoral Education, or CPE. And the first lesson I learned, that ministry comes in many forms. That being present is doing something. Pastoral care is whatever the person needs, and sometimes it's just watching TV together. In 1925, Dr. Richard Cabot, often referred to as the father of medical social work, had written a plea for a clinical year for theological students at Harvard. Dr. Cabot, a prominent physician, and I'm proud to say an active Unitarian in Boston, called for an internship for theologians similar to those in medical school, where pastoral practice would be learned in a clinical setting under supervision. As CPE developed, other leaders opened their doors to integrating knowledge from medicine, psychology, and behavioral science and into pastoral practice. Last year, Baptist Health celebrated 30 years of providing clinical pastoral education. A 20 to 30 hour per week program that runs for 9 months. It is a requirement for most ministerial education programs and church chaplains. I was supported by Buckman Bridge in order to complete the CPE program. Early out, our CPE supervisor shared an address from the Rabbi David Kipler titled, "CPE is Hard." CPE is hard because chaplaincy is hard. Because if done right, being a chaplain consistently exposes one to situations of extreme and sometimes intractable human suffering. Chaplains are just supposed to be there and listen and go wherever the patient or family wants to go. But this can be excruciatingly difficult in a number of different ways. We may find ourselves reliving the pain of similar situations in our own lives and struggle with our own beliefs of why bad things happen in our world. According to the rabbi, the challenge for the chaplain is simply to stay present, not to change the subject or find a socially acceptable means of reducing the painful intensity of the situation. Chaplaincy is not about fixing it. And I say that so many times with our team at Buckman Bridge. Okay, you can take this person, but you can't fix it. Because that's what we want to do. We want to fix it and make it better, but chaplaincy isn't about that. Our job is to sit there and listen, perhaps to things that no one else in that person's family is willing or able to listen to. Our task is to see people as a living human document as we offer, if nothing else, a ministry of presence. And that's the easy part. Because clinical pastoral education is actually an 80-20 rule. 20% about the patient and 80% about the chaplain. Chaplain interns are placed in situations where their buttons will be pushed in the midst of suffering. And then they must avoid all the defenses that most of us would use to avoid the pain of that suffering. And to top that, they're made to write reports of those situations, reflect and analyze, and share them at the most inner levels of themselves. And the stories. We all bring our stories, and we hear those of others. Our stories ground us. We select them, we edit them, and then we tell them to others in order to explain ourselves. But I learned through CPE that it's important to know if you have the story or the story has you, if you want to help another. William Bridges, in his book, The Way of Transitions, talks about how transitions can mark turning points where new realities become present to us. But we have to be willing to let go of who we are and what we know for what we could be. CPE is about transition, and transition can feel like a hard place. Now, in CPE, you set goals. And one of my goals was to become comfortable with Christian rituals. At that time, I would have called myself a theist, at best. But there's a lot of Christian people in hospitals. The Reverend Christine Robinson relates that 4 out of 5 UUs come to Unitarian Universalists after a childhood spent in other faith communities. We left those communities because we no longer believed what they taught, and we often left wounded and bewildered by our experiences. Most UUs are doubters. We're clearer about what we don't believe and aware that the beliefs that they could hold or do hold might be wrong. I realized that much of my discomfort with Christian rituals was left over from my feelings about my grandfather and my experience with him in the Church of God. Any Church of God, folks? Pretty strict. During my time as CPE, I was called to baptize infants and frequently asked for prayer by Christian families. And at first, I will say, this was challenging for me. I'm used to a prayer you write down on a piece of paper and bring up here and say, okay, we're going to have a prayer meditation or whatever strikes your heart. But there, it's impromptu. The sharing of different views on these from my peers, though, helped me to realize that I am the vessel, but not the provider. If you've ever taken a Reiki class, it's a similar concept, and it's one that sustained and helped me grow enormously. Prayer requests start to feel more natural, and I can feel the holy moment in a baptism. And the wedding I performed in a Baptist church for my stepfather was a time of joy and comfort. Most interesting is the amount of Christian work that comes my way since accepting this. I've been offered to officiate a Hindu Christian marriage. I've ministered a gay Christian funeral. And I've performed a child blessing for a Lutheran Catholic couple, which is lovely. And why wouldn't I? Unitarian Universalists have roots in Judeo-Christian history, and it's a blessing to be able to explore this area of our history with an open heart and to be able to provide this ministry to those in need. But to do this, we must continue to grow in our knowledge of all faiths. Lynn Unger from the Church of the Larger Fellowship has had recent musings, and I really like her. If you don't know about the Church of the Larger Fellowship or connect with them, the Quest magazine they send out is wonderful, and Lynn has writings in it every month. And she wrote that UUs get lots of choices. You can believe in God or not. And if you do believe in God, you could imagine God in countless different ways, or gods, or not. You can assume that people go to heaven when they die, or that we get reincarnated as new people or animals, or that we're just flat out gone. You can honor Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or Hindu holidays, and today is the beginning of Ramadan, so to support our sisters and brothers. And you can pray to a god or not, or meditate, or do yoga, or skip spiritual practices altogether, which can be a wonderful opportunity to really think about what you believe in and what matters to you and how you want to live your life. I could believe that God made the world or that it all happened through natural scientific laws. But I think that not only can science explain all the wonderful variety of life, but also I love knowing I am made of the same atoms that were stars. It might be simpler if some authority told you with certainty what was and wasn't true. It might be easier, but it would certainly be less of an adventure. I realized going through CPE that it is difficult for others to wrap around the concept of Unitarian Universalism because of the lack of creed. And because no one UU can speak for all when it comes to religious belief, and so that can be hard to articulate. I'm comfortable in my own personal belief and how my UU values and theology guide my actions, but it's not an easy path. At times, the opinions of others regarding our beliefs can be harsh, but living our faith should guide our responses to the respect, the dignity of each person, even as we disagree. Just as speaking louder does not improve communication with someone who doesn't speak English, anger and emotional response does not communicate the wonder of what we have. In May of 2005, the UUA's Commission on Appraisal issued a report of its 4-year study on the matter of our theological diversity. In it, they stated, Unitarian Universalists must be prepared to be equal partners in conversations about religion with those whose traditions are well-defined, whose rituals can be explained and demonstrated, and whose commitment to those traditions and rituals is firm. We are now reaching about 15 years out from that statement. Different is not another word for wrong. That's a song. Thich Nhat Hanh says we are here to awaken from the illusion of our separateness. This is the companion responsibility to all the seeking, searching, and questing that we as UUs love to do. All of our ethnicity, our beliefs, our educational and economic backgrounds melt away in critical moments. Simply being a loving presence is ultimately the most important gift that any of us and any chaplain can give, no matter what their belief system is. And lastly, I learned a lot about Baptist. I learned that Baptist Hospital is not owned by Baptist. Who knew? They like to present it like it is, but it's not. I've learned that you can go into a restaurant where they say, "Oh, you're with the Baptist," and you can say yes, and lightning will not strike you down. My CPE peer group and clinical exposure has showed me in a much more personal way that there are as many views of Christianity as there are Unitarian Universalist beliefs, and that we have more in common than we have different. Bad Baptist is not one word, okay? I've learned that there are many different paths and kinds of Baptists, and that they may struggle with their theology foundations just as any faith group, and we're seeing that a lot recently in the news. And what does this mean for us? Well, I realize that I and many others need to expand in our community. I saw a bumper sticker. I love bumper stickers. I won't put them on my car, though, but I have window things. But this one said, "Try to be informed, not just opinionated." We can't just answer with elevator speeches. We are all, in our way, chaplains and ministers, and it is time to revisit some of our core sharing that supports us. As each of you moves through this time of transition here at UUCJ, you have the opportunity to be there for each other. Perhaps you hear the call to explore a new adventure, or just to be present to truly listen. I will be downstairs after the service to talk about information and a training that we are doing for pastoral care associates that we are opening to your congregation as well, at no charge to you. Any questions you might have about CPE, I can also answer, or Reverend Carmen, who came with me today. So let's live the words of Thandika. If someone tells you that she or he knows pain, loneliness, loss, fear, and dismay, but does not know the feeling of being sustained by a love that is wider and deeper and infinitely vaster, that the sorrows, hear those words as a commission. Hear your commission to love, to create community, and to heal. One at a time in personal relationships, 10 at a time in covenant groups, hundreds at a time in our congregations, hundreds of thousands at a time in our religious movement, millions at a time as we take our commission deeper and deeper into humanity's heart as a justice-loving people who will transform the earth. This is the good news of our faith. In retrospect, I have viewed those 9 months as being similar to a pregnancy, with all the parts of the progress. The inconveniences, wondering why I did this, physical discomforts in the call room bed, opinions about my decision, but at least no one was rubbing my stomach for luck, a lack of sleep, waiting for the arrival, and I did gain 40 pounds, and finally the delivery of something wonderful in a new creation. My last lesson from CPE, it's fluid. You'll never have it all, and it's tough. And I read a question sent to Rabbi Rami Shapiro. If you could whisper only 2 words to a dying person, what would you say? And his answer was courage, love. And I'd whisper that same to a newborn as well. And you know what? Being loved gives you strength, and loving someone gives you courage. And when I started my program, I would introduce myself as being from the chaplain's office. But my last night of call, I went to a code, and that night I said, "Hi, I'm the chaplain. I thought I'd be here with you if that's okay." I have a lot to learn still, but I am the chaplain, and I am blessed to be so.